The capture. June 14, 1944. 3:47 a.m. Outside Carentan, Normandy. Oberleutnant Klaus Becker presses his face against wet grass, tasting mud and cordite. Artillery thunder rolls across the hedgerows. American shells, walking closer. The 91st Luftland Division scattered 12 hours ago. Now it's just Becker and 4 others, crouched in a drainage ditch while tracer rounds stitch red lines through pre-dawn darkness. We should surrender, Gefreiter Otto Hoffmann whispers, his Mauser trembling in his hands. His 19 hasn't shaved in a week. Becker grips his shoulder. When it's light, white flag, proper surrender. But the Americans don't wait. Boots splash through the flooded field. Flashlights pierce the mist. A voice barks in accented German, Hand hoch, hands up, now. 6 GIs surround them, and 1 Garand's leveled. Becker rises slowly, arms raised, watching his war end in a French ditch. A sergeant, name tape reads Martinez, pats them down, confiscates weapons, binds their wrists with cord. Professional. Almost gentle. You're lucky, Martinez says in broken German. War's over for you. Becker doesn't feel lucky. He feels nothing. Just the weight of failure and the strange relief of survival. The Atlantic crossing. July 2nd, 1944. Mid-Atlantic. SS George Washington. Below deck, the converted troopship rocks through heavy seas. 2,000 German prisoners pack the cargo holds. Officers separated from enlisted men. Everyone sick from the motion and the stench. Becker clutches a bucket, heaving nothing but bile. Around him, men moan in a dozen dialects. Prussian, Bavarian, Austrian, Czech. A American guard, Private Johnson, young, from somewhere called Nebraska, distributes crackers and water. He doesn't speak German, but he smiles. Actually smiles. Hands Becker an extra ration when he sees him shaking. This is propaganda, mutters Hauptmann Victor Krauser from the next bunk, diehard SS, still wearing his death's head collar tabs though the insignia's been torn off. They fatten us before the slaughter. But there's no slaughter. Just endless ocean, and the gradual realization that the ship's direction contradicts everything they've been told. They're not heading to Britain. They're sailing west. On the 7th day, Becker climbs on deck during the exercise rotation. Dawn breaks over an alien horizon. And there, emerging from morning haze, the Statue of Liberty rises green and impossible against the New York skyline. Someone behind him gasps. Gott im Himmel. America. They're in America. Arrival in the arsenal of democracy. July 9th, 1944. Camp Shanks, New York. The processing center swallows them in waves. Tables stacked with forms. Medical officers checking teeth, eyes, listening to hearts. Becker moves through the assembly line in a daze, still processing the train ride from the port, the sheer scale of everything. Buildings that scraped clouds. Bridges spanning impossible distances. Highways choked with automobiles, not military vehicles, but civilian cars, thousands of them, as if gasoline was limitless. An interpreter, Sergeant First Class Werner Schmidt, German-American, Milwaukee accent, explains the Geneva Convention rules while distributing prison uniforms. You'll be paid for work. 80 cents per day. You can buy cigarettes, candy, toiletries at the camp canteen. You will be treated according to international law. Krauser spits. American lies. But the uniform Becker receives isn't rags. It's new denim, sturdy stitching, his size. The boots fit. When they march to the mess hall for dinner, he expects watery soup. Instead, the line cooks pile his tray with fried chicken, mashed potatoes swimming in gravy, green beans, white bread with butter, apple pie. Real food. More food than he's seen on a single plate since 1942. Hoffman stares at his tray like it might vanish. This is what prisoners eat. An American MP, Corporal Davis, overhears, shrugs. Standard chow. Pretty good today, actually. Becker sits at a long table, fork hovering over the chicken. Around him, men eat in stunned silence, their gaunt faces slowly registering something beyond hunger. Doubt. The first hairline cracks in the edifice of everything they'd been taught about the enemy. Assignment to the Heartland. August 15, 1944. Camp Clarinda, Iowa. The train carries them through America's interior for 3 days. Becca watches through barred windows as the landscape transforms, from industrial sprawl to endless farmland. Cornfields stretch to every horizon, golden and heavy-headed, mile after impossible mile. Towns roll past, neat houses, white churches, children waving from porches as if they're not enemy soldiers but curiosities. Camp Clarinda sits on former CCC grounds, surrounded by barbed wire but not the high walls they expected. Wooden barracks, clean latrines, recreation yards with volleyball nets. The camp commander, Colonel Patterson, addresses them through Schmidt's translation. You're here to work. Corn harvest, soybean processing, some manufacturing contracts. You follow the rules, you'll be treated fairly. You cause trouble, you'll face consequences. Understood. The work assignments come next day. Becca draws factory duty, a defense plant corporation facility 10 miles east, producing vehicle parts. They load into trucks at dawn, 30 prisoners with 4 guards, and drive through Iowa farmland to a sprawling industrial complex. The factory floor stops him cold. Inside the machine. August 16, 1944. 7:15 a.m. Rock Island Arsenal Production Line 7. The noise hits first, a mechanical thunder that vibrates through his chest. Then the scale. The assembly line stretches beyond his vision, disappearing into warehouse depths that could swallow a city block. Overhead cranes swing engine blocks through the air like toys. Welding torches sparkle in constellations. Conveyor belts carry chassis frames at steady rhythm while workers, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, attend each station with practiced efficiency. Half the workers are women. This registers slowly. Women in coveralls, their hair bound in colored scarves, operating punch presses and drill assemblies with casual competence. One, she can't be older than 25, guides a massive stamping machine that shapes steel fenders with hydraulic force that makes the concrete tremble. The shift foreman, Mr. Peterson, assigns them through Schmidt. You'll be sorting parts, basic assembly, quality check. Stay at your station. Ask if you need help. Becca takes his position at a conveyor belt. His job, inspect transmission gears for defects, sort them into bins. Simple work. Mindless work. But beside him, the assembly continues its relentless pace. 1 completed vehicle part every 90 seconds. He does the math involuntarily. 30 per hour. 240 per shift. Running 24 hours. How many factories like this? He asks Schmidt during the mid-morning break. Schmidt lights a cigarette, considering. In the Rock Island arsenal alone? Maybe 20 production lines this size. Across the country. He shrugs. Thousands. Tens of thousands. Detroit's got assembly plants that make this look small. Becca watches a crane lift a completed engine, one of hundreds he's seen cycle through just this morning. The Germans were told American industry was crippled by Jewish influence, weakened by democracy's inefficiency, stretched too thin to matter. The evidence churning before him suggests otherwise. The Abundance. September 3, 1944. Sunday. Camp Clarinda Canteen. On rest day, prisoners can buy goods with their work scrip. Becca enters the canteen expecting bare shelves, token items. Instead, he finds aisles stocked like a civilian store. Cigarettes in a dozen brands. Candy bars, Hershey's, Baby Ruth, Snickers. Razors, soap, toothpaste, writing paper. Coca-Cola in glass bottles, cold from an electric refrigerator. Hoffman holds up a chocolate bar, reading the price. 20 cents. We could buy 5 of these with 1 day's pay. It's a bribe, Krauser mutters, though he's eyeing the cigarettes. Make us forget we're prisoners. But the illusion breaks when they're allowed into town for supervised recreation. Iowa City, population 20,000, feels like a fever dream. Store windows display goods without ration signs, shirts, shoes, radios, toys. A diner advertises all the coffee you can drink, 10 cents. Through the window, Becca watches American families eating lunch. Steaks, hamburgers, heaping portions that would feed a German squad. No bomb damage. No rubble. No hollow-eyed hunger. An elderly woman stops on the sidewalk, notices their POW markings, and actually smiles. You boys from Germany? My grandfather came from Stuttgart. She hands the guard $1. Get them some ice cream. The guard, Corporal Williams, shrugs and leads them to a drugstore fountain. 3 scoops each, vanilla and chocolate. Hoffman eats slowly, like he's trying to make it last forever. How? He whispers. How are they not starving? Becca has no answer. The numbers don't add up. America's feeding itself, feeding Britain, feeding the Soviet Union, equipping armies across 3 continents, and somehow there's still ice cream for prisoners. The crack in the faith. October 12, 1944. Evening. Barracks 7. The camp allows newspapers, military censored, but real news. Becca reads about the advance across France, the liberation of Paris, the Wehrmacht retreating on all fronts. Around him, men huddle over the pages, piecing together the reality they've been shielded from. My brother's regiment, someone says, listed as destroyed at Falaise. Krauser still preaches from his bunk. Propaganda. The Führer has wonder weapons. Vengeance will. Shut your mouth, Hoffman snaps. He's been in Iowa 3 months, gained 20 pounds, lost something harder to measure. I've seen their factories. I've seen their food. Their women build more tanks in a week than we build in a month, and they're not even hungry. What wonder weapon beats that? The silence stretches. 60 men in the barracks, and nobody defends Krauser's position. The true believers shrink daily, their certainty eroded by every full meal, every smoothly running assembly line, every American guard who treats them like humans instead of animals. Becca thinks about the mathematics of it. Germany's total industrial production versus America's. Population statistics. Raw resources. Even if the fatherland wasn't being bombed to rubble, even if they held every territory they'd conquered, the sheer scale of American output makes victory mathematically impossible. They never had a chance. Not really. The realization settles like cold water. The escape that wasn't. November 28, 1944. Thanksgiving. 2 prisoners from Barracks 3 cut the fence and run. The alarm sounds at 2 a.m. By dawn, state police find them 12 miles away, sheltering in a barn, half frozen, confused. They hadn't planned past getaway. Where would they go? How would they survive? Blend in when they barely speak English? The camp confines them to quarters for 2 weeks, the harshest punishment Becca's witnessed. Colonel Patterson addresses the camp the next day. Escape attempts will be punished. But understand something. His voice carries across the assembly yard. Where would you go? You're in the middle of Iowa. Nearest port is 1,000 miles. Even if you reached it, you'd need papers, money, transportation across an ocean where our Navy controls every shipping lane. And if you somehow made it back to Germany. He pauses. You'd return to a country that's losing. Badly. Nobody argues. The statistics are stark. Of 425,000 German POWs in America, fewer than 2,000 attempted escape. Most were caught within days. The success rate rounds to 0. After dinner, turkey with all the trimmings, the Americans celebrating some harvest holiday, Hoffman voices what many think, why would we escape? We're safer here than our families are at home. Letters from the ruins. January 17, 1945. Mail call. Becca receives his first letter from home in 4 months. His sister's handwriting, but the paper's rough, the words careful. She writes about the bombing of Berlin, their neighborhood destroyed, food rations cut again. Their mother died in November, pneumonia, no medicine. His father's factory, where they'd built aircraft parts, is rubble. We are grateful you are alive, she writes. Even if you are a prisoner. Perhaps especially because you are a prisoner. At least you are fed. At least you are safe. Around him, men read similar letters. Some cry. Krauser stares at his, hands shaking, the words apparently describing something his ideology can't process. His hometown, Dresden, mentions fire, but the censors blacked out details. The propaganda films they'd been shown before capture depicted America as a mongrel nation, weak and decadent, crumbling from within. The letters describe a Germany being crushed from without, while they, the prisoners, eat 3 meals daily in heated barracks, sleep in real beds, work for wages, and watch American productivity flow like a river that can't be dammed. The cognitive dissonance becomes unbearable for some. Others, like Becker, feel it resolve into terrible clarity. The Education. March 3, 1945. Camp Clarinda Recreation Hall. The Army begins what they call re-education programs. Optional attendance, voluntary discussion groups. Films about democracy, lectures on governance, debates about individual rights versus state power. Some prisoners boycott. Others attend from curiosity or boredom. Becker goes because he needs to understand. A professor from the University of Iowa, Dr. Hartmann, Austrian refugee, leads the discussions. He doesn't lecture. He asks questions. What is the purpose of government? To serve the state, Krauser responds automatically. To ensure the strength of the nation. And if the state demands you die for its glory, then you die proudly. Dr. Hartmann nods slowly. Let me propose an alternative. What if government exists to protect individual rights? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness? What if the state serves the people, not the other way around? The debate rages for 2 hours. Becker listens to men argue with concepts they've never encountered, wrestling with ideas that threaten everything they've built their identities upon. By the end, nobody's changed positions, but the certainties have developed cracks. Walking back to barracks, Hoffman speaks quietly. My father always said, the Führer knows best. But what if he didn't? What if we were lied to from the beginning? Krauser overhears, spits at Hoffman's feet. Traitor. But Krauser now sits alone at meals. The true believers number perhaps 50 in a camp of 2,000. The rest have seen too much, learned too much, thought too much to maintain the faith. Victory in Europe. May 8, 1945. VE Day. The announcement comes over the camp loudspeaker at 9 a.m. Germany has surrendered unconditionally. The war in Europe is over. American guards cheer, embrace, some cry. The prisoners stand in the yard, silent, processing what it means. They're not going home. Not yet. Germany is occupied, devastated, processing its own prisoners and refugees. So they stay in Iowa, working the spring planting season, and wait. But something fundamental shifts. They're no longer enemy combatants held until cessation of hostilities. They're simply men, far from home, caught in history's machinery. The guards sense it too. The atmosphere softens. More privileges granted. Town visits unsupervised. Some prisoners attend local churches, receive dinner invitations from farm families. Becker finds himself at the home of Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, whose farm he's been working since March. Their son died at Anzio. They know this. They invited him anyway. Mrs. Thompson serves pot roast, asks about his family, looks genuinely concerned when he mentions his mother's death. I'm sorry, she says, and means it. This war's been terrible for everyone. The absurdity strikes him. Sitting in his enemy's kitchen, eating his enemy's food, receiving his enemy's compassion. The propaganda called Americans monsters. Called them weak. Called them everything except what they actually are. People. Staggeringly productive people with resources to spare even for their captives. The Factory Tour. July 20th, 1945. Special permission. Ford Motor Company, Detroit. A group of officer prisoners receives authorization for an educational tour, part of the re-education program. Becker's included, along with 30 others, all deemed cooperative and suitable for democratic rehabilitation. They board a train to Michigan, accompanied by Army personnel and civilian observers. The River Rouge complex sprawls across 2,000 acres. Becker stands at the visitor overlook and watches iron ore arrive by ship, enter the blast furnaces, emerge as steel, get shaped into automotive parts, and roll off assembly lines as completed vehicles, all on the same grounds. The entire production cycle, from raw material to finished product, continuous and integrated. The guide, a Ford engineer named Mr. Richardson, explains proudly, at peak production, we completed one B-24 Liberator bomber every 63 minutes. This single complex outproduced the entire German aviation industry. He says it casually. A simple fact. Not boasting. Not propaganda. Just mathematics. Becker watches a line of trucks roll past, GMC 2.5-ton cargo trucks, the same ones the Wehrmacht captured and prized above their own vehicles. The factory produces them in a river of steel and rubber. 15 per hour, Richardson mentions. Just trucks. Just one product among hundreds. The numbers become obscene. Incomprehensible. America built 300,000 aircraft during the war. 2 million trucks. Thousands of ships. And still had surplus capacity to produce civilian goods. Still fed its population without serious rationing. Still maintained an economy that grew while others collapsed. How do you fight that? You don't. You couldn't. It was never a contest. The Truth About America. September 14, 1945. Camp Clarinda Library. Becker discovers the camp library by accident, following Hoffman, who's teaching himself English. The shelves contain donated books, magazines, newspapers. He picks up a National Geographic from before the war, flips through photographs of American landscapes, California valleys, Texas plains, Montana mountains, resource abundance spanning a continent. A report from the Brookings Institution sits nearby, probably meant for the guards, but not restricted. He reads statistics about American industrial capacity, 50% of global manufacturing output, 60% of global oil production. More steel, more aluminum, more rubber than the rest of the world combined. We never had a chance, he says aloud. Hoffman looks up from his English primer. No. Germany defeated Germany. We just chose the wrong fight. An American guard, Sergeant Foster, a teacher in civilian life, overhears, approaches. Can I share something? My brother worked at Boeing. They built 12,731 B-17 bombers. Know how many Germany built of all heavy bomber types? He pauses. About 1,500. You guys bet everything on tactical warfare, blitzkrieg, speed, early knockout punch. We bet on industrial depth. On production. On the long game. He's not gloating. Just explaining. Becker appreciates the honesty more than he'd appreciate false comfort. So what happens now? Hoffman asks. To us? To Germany? Foster considers. We rebuild. That's what America does. We're already planning it. Marshall Plan, Reconstruction Aid. We're not going to grind Germany into dust. We're going to help you become something better. It sounds insane. Impossible. But then, everything about America has seemed impossible since Becker arrived. The Return. December 1945 to April 1946. Repatriation processing. They ship prisoners home in waves, processing them through debriefing sessions and medical checks. Becker's turn comes in March 1946. He's gained 40 pounds since capture, speaks functional English, carries a letter of recommendation from the Thompson farm. On his last day, he walks through Camp Clarinda one final time. The barracks where he learned his ideology was hollow. The canteen where he saw abundance without cruelty. The factory where he witnessed productivity beyond propaganda. The library where he understood America's true power wasn't military. It was industrial, structural, foundational. Colonel Patterson shakes his hand at departure. Good luck, Lieutenant. Help build something better. The ship to Bremen carries 3,000 repatriates. They crowd the rails as Europe appears. Scarred coastline, ruined ports, a continent still bleeding. They dock in a Germany that exists only in fragments. Soviet zone, British zone, French zone, American zone. Becker's processed through the American sector, given travel papers, released. He takes a train toward Berlin, watches the landscape through cracked windows. Every city bombed. Every bridge temporary. Refugees everywhere. The Reich that was supposed to last 1,000 years lasted 12, and left only rubble. But America offered him chocolate. Paid him wages. Let him work beside its women. Showed him its libraries and factories and inexhaustible plenty. America didn't just defeat Germany militarily. It defeated the ideology, shattered the illusion of supremacy by simply existing as a counterexample too vast to deny. The aftermath. 1946 to 1950. Rebuilding and reckoning. Of the 425,000 German POWs held in America, post-war surveys reveal staggering shifts. Roughly 90% abandoned Nazi ideology before repatriation. Exposure to American industrial capacity, living standards, and democratic principles accomplished what battlefield defeat alone could not: a psychological transformation. Becker settles in what becomes West Germany, finds work as a translator for the Marshall Plan administration. He watches American aid pour in: food, machinery, materials, capital. The same abundance that fed him as a prisoner now rebuilds his nation. The same industrial might that crushed the Wehrmacht now reconstructs German factories along democratic lines. Some former prisoners emigrate legally to America, sponsored by families they'd worked for, communities they'd befriended. Hoffman becomes one, moves to Iowa in 1948, marries a farmer's daughter, starts a machinery repair business. He writes Becker occasionally, letters full of gratitude and bemusement at the strange path his life has taken. Krauser and the other true believers return bitter, unreconstructed, muttering about betrayal and weakness. But their voices in a wilderness that no longer listens. Germany has seen where that path leads. Most want no part of it again. The psychological victory was complete, achieved not through violence but through contrast. Every assembly line, every full meal, every humane interaction demonstrated the bankruptcy of the ideology they'd been fed. America won hearts and minds not by design, but by simply being itself, productive, abundant, and casually powerful in ways totalitarianism could never match. Reflection at distance. 1960s, 1970s. Looking back. Decades later, historians interview former POWs about their experiences. The pattern repeats across thousands of testimonies. Initial shock, gradual realization, ideological collapse, reluctant understanding. Becker, now a grandfather teaching at the University of Frankfurt, tries to explain to students who never knew the war. We were told America was weak, decadent, mongrelized, on the verge of collapse. Then they captured us, fed us better than our own army did, paid us wages, and showed us factories that ran like clockwork to supply half the world. The cognitive dissonance was profound. A student asks, "Did you feel betrayed? By your own leadership?" Betrayed. Lied to. Manipulated. All of that. He pauses, choosing words carefully, but also grateful. If I'd stayed at the front, I'd likely have died in some rubble-heap defense of nothing. As a prisoner, I survived. More, I learned what Germany could become. What it has become, in part. The true genius of America's approach was its unintentionality. There was no master plan to convert POWs through exposure to abundance. The camps were simply run according to Geneva Convention standards. The factories were already operating at capacity. The stores were already stocked because American industry simply produced that much. The transformation happened as a byproduct of normal American life. Germany lost the war on battlefields across Europe. But the deeper defeat, the ideological collapse, happened in Iowa farm fields, Illinois factories, Texas training camps. Everywhere ordinary American life demonstrated the lie at the heart of Nazi philosophy: that totalitarian efficiency would overcome democratic weakness. It never was close.